Hey, have you ever been stuck in a rig or in something? When we were newly married, me and Jess got married. We ended up going to Cabo San Lucas, which was a very poor choice of a place to go when you're broke and like 20. And so we went to Cabo San Lucas, and of course we sat in one of these little pitch things where you know they want to sell you a condo and they tell you you're going to get divorced or who knows what. They're really good at it. We stuck it out, and so we got to ride quads for free. And so, quads, we got to ride a quad for free. And so the coolest part of this story is we end up riding quads, the craziest trip ever because no one spoke English and they just took off and we didn't know how to run this stuff. But we finally go out, we're out on the beach where they filmed Troy. It's kind of cool, right? I was waiting to see Brad Pitt or someone running out there. There was nothing. It was just a beach with dunes. And the guy doesn't speak any English, hardly any English at all. So what he says to us in as broken English as possible is he says, "Don't stop hill. Don't stop on the hill." That's it. And then we get to go. And so people take off. So we're having fun. We're riding through the dunes. I see this lady go up a hill, and she gets scared, and she stops. And then her wheels dig in. So the rest of the time, this lady was stuck on the hill. And so when I first went to see her, we go to drive up and we see her and she's like, "Stop, help me." And we're like, "No." And we drove by her. Sure enough, another person comes up and they go up to the hill, they stop. And people are trying to flag us down. We're like, we just kept going. And we kept going because we didn't want to get stuck with them. And they spent their whole time that they paid for. We were free, by the way. They spent their whole time stuck on a hill because they didn't follow the directions. And they were stuck on the hill because they stopped. And I just think of that being stuck on the hill, and I think of the story of Jehoshaphat. By the way, Jehoshaphat's nickname, guess what it was? It was either Jeho or So Fat. It's one of those two. I'm just guessing. That's not biblical, but my dad texts that to me, so he's like, "Give me some insight on Jehoshaphat." That's what he writes me. But Judah is in this spiritual revival, and it's so awesome. And in the process of a revival, what happens? The enemy attacks. And so three groups come together to fight Judah, who's in spiritual revival. And so Jehoshaphat does four things that I think are amazing. The first thing is he's terrified. Anybody been terrified before? Maybe another word is afraid. Maybe another word is worried. How about this? He's in selfie mode. He's just thinking about himself. He's sitting there thinking, we are going to die. The fear of three enemies coming at him. By the way, Israel has a crazy king as well. They're not attacking, but they're there. And they built a defense against them. But these three armies are attacking Israel, and he's terrified. And so the second thing he does is probably what we should do, right? Because when you're terrified, what do? Most of the time, that's when we get into sin. When we're scared or when we're afraid, what do? We start doing things in our own strength to solve the problem. Turn to your neighbor and say, "Come on, it's you." You know that. Come on, we step into our problem. We're terrified. And we go, "Well, I'll solve this right now. I will solve this. I will chop this. I will do this. I will say this." That's what you would expect Jehoshaphat to do, but he's on fire for the Lord. So when he's terrified, worried, afraid, when it hits him, what does he do? He begs the Lord for guidance. That's powerful. If you're here today and you're stuck, you're in a situation, what should you do? You should turn to God for guidance. The ESV says he set his face to seek the Lord. Like he stopped everything and said, "I don't even care what's going on. God, you in this? You with me?" And I love this idea. We should never fight a battle without first asking God. You should never fight any battle without stopping and going, "God, what do you want me to do? How many of the problems in our life are sitting there because we picked a battle that God's going, what are you doing? And we're like, I'm fighting for you. No, you're fighting against me. And I love this. And so the third thing is not as exciting. He faces God. He calls on the Lord. And then what does he do? He says, hey, everybody, let's get together. We're going to fast. We are going to fast. You know what fasting really means in simplest terms, in my opinion? God, I'm serious. In a nutshell, God, I'm really serious. I'm so serious, I'm willing to start dying so that you speak. I mean, if no food's going in, you're dying, correct? It's just a thought. He calls the nation to a fast. And I love what it says. It goes on, it says, everyone resolved to seek help from the Lord. The whole nation of Judah came together and they all sought resolution from God. They all sought after the Lord. They all said, God, help us. Not God, we got our sword. No, they said, God, help us. When I was reading this, the fasting stuck out. Because when I read fasting, I thought, oh man, if I start preaching about fasting, we're going to start losing people quick. And of course, that's what we're talking about today. What is fasting? You know, fasting's the best way to die to yourself. In a nutshell, fasting is taking your desires and yourself and your feelings and emotions and pushing them to the side and saying, God, speak to me. I'm serious. I need you to do something. And you know what I love? I love that God gives us guidance and help and peace. He's the one that can provide these things, not you. I love this. I love that it says we're serious. It's your thoughts, not mine, God. This story of John Wesley. I love John Wesley. I went to Nazarene Bible College, and we always joked, and it said that we should all wear a brace. It said WWJWD, which is what would John Wesley do, because they talked about him all the time. But John Wesley fasted Mondays and Fridays. Until he got older, then he just fasted Fridays. And I love this guy that had such an impact in history, took 2 days of his week out to seek God. How many of you guys know if you fasted 2 days a week, you even on those days when you get a little knocked down or whatever, you'd have to stop and go, God, what do you want me to do with my life? I love that. I think it's so amazing for you guys to experience this. And I love that Jehoshaphat, he's stuck in a battle and he's outnumbered. And let me tell you, when I read this story, you can think of people. But when I was sitting there during worship, I felt like God was saying the sins outnumber you. The sins that are coming at you, the stuff. I mean, we're in a fast right now, and I'm trying to watch a football game, and every commercial is a Burger King or something. Come to Applebee's, and it's like, I can't even turn this thing on. And all these things are coming at you. They're surrounding you. They're surrounding you. What do we do when we're surrounded? We stop. We ask God for guidance. Yeah. We lay our life down. And we call everybody to get around and say, let's do this together. I've always heard this thing with the storm, right? You're either in a storm, you're on your way to a storm, or you're on your way out of a storm, right? I see this as the same with battle. You're either in a battle right now, you're on your way out of a battle, or you're about to get into a battle. And this is the cool thing with fasting. If you're here today and everything's going great, put yourself in a situation where God could speak to you before a battle comes. If you're here and you're in a battle, put yourself in a situation where you lay your life down and you say, okay, God, what do I do in this battle? It's your will, not mine. And if you're on your way out of the battle, God, where do you want me to go when all this is done? I think this is great. 2 Timothy 3:1-3 says this. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For people will be lovers of, you could say the word. You could read all those other ones, but they're pretty much linked to that. The people will be lovers of themselves. And you know what's crazy is I feel like we're in the last days. Yeah. I feel like we're in a time. I talked to a guy about fasting this week, and I said, "Hey, what are you going to fast?" And he goes, "Okay, let's talk about it. What can we start going through like things he could fast?" And he started to tell me like, "Well, I don't want to give up something that I want or I desire." Like, that's the point. But he's like, "No, I can't give up food because I like food. Well, I can't give up this because I like this." And it's like, that's the point. I think that's where we're at. I think a lot of people get to that place where it's hard to lay down the things we love for the thing that we should love the most. The one thing that can change our life more than anything else. And so I'll have Ruth come up. So there's 3 reasons to fast, and these are just my 3 reasons. But the first one is you need to put your old self to death. I want to invite you to fast. And in a little bit, we'll explain some of what that looks like. But I think we need to put our old selves to death. You know, it's not done you any good. It's the one that carries all the weight. It's the one that got you in the trouble that you needed Jesus for in the beginning. It's the reason why he died so that we can find life and life to the fullest through him. We need to put the old self to death. Galatians 2:20 says this, "My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live." Doesn't that sound like death to self? "But Christ that lives in me." So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loves me and gave his life, or gave himself for me. How many of you guys realize that's what fasting is? You're laying your life down and saying it's not I that lives, but it's you that lives in me. I'm putting these passions aside. I'm putting these things aside so that you can speak, so that you can move, so that you can do what I can't do. I love this. I trust you, God, with my life. When's the last time you put yourself through pain so that God could speak? You know, the devil says the same thing since day one. He says, just try it. Maybe you'll like it. Just try it. How do you know if you don't try it? And forget about what God says. Just try this. Just try this fruit. Try this thing. But forget about what God says because he doesn't know what's best. How many of you guys know we need to stop? We need to stop everything. And we need to sit there and go, God, it was the same argument with Eve and it's the same one with me. I could do this in my situation, or I could stop and say, God, what do you want me to do? He's going to say, not eat that fruit because you got all the other fruit. But that one will lead to death. I wonder how much the devil has been messing with you. See, our problem is we tend to see God only when the pain is too much. I'm so guilty of this. When the pain is to a place where you can't go any farther, what do? You seek God. But guess what? He'll take you whether you're in pain or whether you're not. He'll take you as you are. I love this about God. But the problem is we tend to avoid pain. For what? For our own pleasure. Until the pain gets enough to where we have to seek God. And I think for you guys today, I'm calling you into pain. It's a terrible thing a pastor could do. I'm calling you in to give something up that you love so that God can be real in your life. I'm calling you together as a church and saying we need God to give us direction in our life. We cannot be a church that just sits and stuck in a spot going, well, we're good enough in our own strength. We are nothing without Christ within us. We are a hill of beans. But with Christ in our life, wow. Everything is possible. I don't want to fast. Weak things. Like the first thing I talk to people, they say, "Oh, I'll fast social media." Well, if that's what you really need to fast social media. But I would say fast social media anyways. Let's move on. Take something in your life that's so hard. Take something in your life that you literally need God to come through. Whether it's food, whether it's relationally. I mean, you can fill in the blank. I sat my kids down and I said, kids, we're going to do a fast. And they started making up all sorts of things. So I said, well, I'll assign you a fast. So then they came up with a fast. This is my children, my kids. They chose to give up 2 days of their week to not eat. My son's in wrestling, my daughter's in soccer. They chose to not eat for 2 days. That was their choice. So for 2 days, full days, they're not eating. My daughter made it through Friday, and she was like, Dad, I am so happy. This is so awesome. I'm so glad I did it. She was not like that when we started the fast, but I think that's us, right? You take that step in, you go, that pastor, he asked me to fast. By the end of the fast, you're going, thank you, God. First night we started, I went to bed, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a long 21 days of just water and maybe some broth or whatever, but I went to bed and God just started giving me these dreams. I mean, just dream after dream after. I was so excited. I woke up. I don't do this normally. I forget my dreams. And then someone asked me and go, dang it, I can't remember that dream. I wrote it in my phone. I wrote the dreams that I had and the things. Some of them made me laugh. Some of them brought me to adventure. I was just like, God was sitting there going, I've been waiting for you all this time. You just need to join me. And I woke up just feeling so full. I had a dream that out of nowhere, my mouth was full of chips. And I was with Ross. I'm like, I'm not supposed to eat. And then Ross, of course, comes up and I'm like, I didn't put them in there. So Ross comes at me and I'm trying to find a way. So I'm like, I got to go to the bathroom. So I go in the bathroom and I start puking these chips out. Of course, Ross follows me into the bathroom, opens the door, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know how these chips got in here. It was a dream. It's a dream. But I'm not eating them. I'm spitting them out. I'm putting this first. And Ross starts laughing. And Ross is like, I did the same thing happened to me. And then he says to me in this weird way, he goes, this is going to bring us together. So I wrote him in the morning, and I said, I wrote him the dream, and he had a dream just like it, like where he had eaten something, it was in his mouth, and he was trying to, anyways. Sorry if you're not in a fast, I'm just probably talking crazy, but I want to say this, we have to fast for the Lord's direction. We have to fast for the Lord's direction, and we need to give up stuff that allow God to see that we're serious. And some of you have health issues and you can't do a full fast. That's okay. But there are things that it's hard to give them up. But when that pain comes, what do? You either sit there and go, well, I'm just doing this for someone else, which is just a diet, right? Or you sit there and you go through the pain saying, God, speak, God, move. How many of you guys are here and your marriage is on the edge? How many of you guys are here and you have a lost child? How many of you guys are here and you're working in a place full of lost people? How many of us need to stop and say, God, give me your direction on my life? Give me your direction on my job. God, I push all of my stuff aside. Maybe I'm the solution. I love this. Maybe you're here, you're stuck, you're surrounded, you're outnumbered. Maybe you're in revival. Here's the cool part of the story. You want to know what's cool? They go in, they send the worshipers forward. The worshipers are singing. God comes and confuses the enemy. And then for 3 days, they collect the spoils. Basically, the enemy kills each other. For 3 days, Judah goes. It takes 3 days to pick up all the plunder. They didn't touch a sword. They didn't fight. Just think about it. What if your battle doesn't need to be won by you? What if you came in here today and the message you were wanting to hear, maybe this isn't it, but maybe you walk out of here today and you step into a fast and God goes, I have victory. I've just been waiting for you. I think, I just think God wants you to stop with your fear and your worry and your control. He wants you to stop and seek Him. If you're here today and you're in worry or control or fear, wrong spot to be. It's okay. It's going to come. It's going to happen. That's where we fast. That's where we seek the Lord. And by the way, as a church, I'm calling you into a fast. I'm calling you to fast with us. The 23rd, we're done. Pick something. Get your kids. Get your friend. Just make it weird. Make it so hard you don't even know if you can make it through. I don't know, but here's the deal. I'm calling you guys to join us, to seek God, to die to ourselves as a church, to not be a church that's labeled by a pastor or by a thing, but we're labeled by a God that died 2,000 something years ago for everybody that's in this town if they just knew Him. It's God first. And I just want to finish with this. Could you imagine? Okay, we're fasting. We're committing to this. There are people that are committing to this. Can you imagine if the whole church got together and said, we're also fasting and we're also going to seek the Lord? Can you imagine what God would do if we all came together and said, we're putting you first? So I want to pray.